Right. Looks like we're live. Okay. Welcome everybody. Welcome to this Thursday. Today's Thursday. Yeah, Thursday episode of Crypto with Chris. One of these weeks, I'll actually get 2 episodes done in a week. I have been trying to. I feel like for a month now, and I keep either missing the Monday or the Thursday episode. I mean, this week we had Christmas, so I guess I have a little bit of an excuse. And it's funny, honestly, it didn't even occur to me that it was Monday and that I could do a show. So yeah, that's how busy I was. But anyway, not that I would have done one anyway, probably, but whatever. Also, I wanted to mention, because I never mention this anymore, I kind of quit doing it, but I do have a Telegram channel where I send out alerts with all the show links for anything that I'm doing. So if you want to be alerted to when I got a show coming up, when I'm going to do one, sometimes if I do an impromptu show or change the schedule around, I post the link there. So just go on to my channel. It's also in the description of all of my shows here. Just click on the Telegram link and go and subscribe to that, and you'll get alerted that way. And that way you'll get notified. I think YouTube notifies you also if I schedule something, but I don't know how this stuff works half the time. So, try the Telegram. Anyway. All right, let's get started. So I wanted to talk about Bitcoin. It's funny. It's definitely stalled out here. This cycle timing is still very vague. I notice I have question marks on both of these. I'm pretty sure this is obviously the top, but I don't know, I was really wanting to see it poke a higher high here to really just kind of cement everything. That would have locked these 2 numbers in, but it hasn't done that yet. And really it kind of looks like it's almost forming like a pennant flag, which I'll sort of touch on the weekly chart here in a second too. But that's kind of what's going on. So in terms of cycle timing, we're just sort of in this vague kind of no man's land right now. We're just sort of inching closer to the ETF deadline, which actually I don't have on the, let's just go to this chart here. So I've got the ETF deadline here. We're inching very close to it. I wanted to look at the weekly because I think it's interesting. It looks a lot more like a proper sort of pennant, unfolding here, just this nice wedge shape. Lower highs, higher lows and lower highs, forming into a pennant, running right into the ETF deadline. I don't know if we actually poke a new high or if we wait till we get up to this and then we do, but somewhere in there, I think we're going to get a bounce on that. And that's kind of what I'm playing everything off of. And as far as the ETF deadline itself, so I know if you look at all the charts, the actual deadlines aren't until even like the second week of January. But I've been following the 2 guys, the 2 Bloomberg guys on Twitter, and they've kind of narrowed it down to between, what was it? I want to say between like next Wednesday and next Friday or something like that, between the 6th and the 8th is what they're projecting the most likely sort of 3-day window is. So it could be any one of those 3 days. Because I think there's one of them that has a deadline on one of those days, and then the rest of them are like the next week. But everybody thinks that the SEC is just going to kind of do them all in one shot, and so they'll probably just go with whatever the sort of the soonest deadline date is, and it's somewhere between the 6th and the 8th. So best guess, based on those guys, they're the experts, is sometime between next Wednesday and next Friday is what they're thinking. So that's kind of what I'm going on and going to assume that they're, odds are that they're more right than wrong. And as far as like the question of if they're going to get approved, I think at this point it's sort of all but a foregone conclusion from all of the back and forth I've seen, all of the back and forth between the SEC and the ETF applicants, the companies, BlackRock, Fidelity, etc. There's just so much chatter right now back and forth that's being publicized, and we're actually seeing very constructive sort of final steps being taken, like filing for symbols and getting, filing for listing on NASDAQ and things like that. So all of that, they wouldn't be doing this if it seems like there wasn't an actual approval forthcoming. So we wouldn't be seeing these sort of late stage final steps taking place if it wasn't going to happen. So I don't really think it's a matter of if anymore. I just think it's a matter of when. And in that case, you could argue, looking at this, maybe, this was known basically as of last week, this all the stuff that I'm talking about. So is it priced in then at this point? Surely not the outside demand from the actual people that are going to be buying this ETF, that can't be priced in because, well, it's not listed yet. It's not live yet. So of course that can't be factored in. But in terms of like people within the crypto space, you could argue that it's largely priced in. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to get a big pump on the day of. I think we do, just because of all the, you know, the short-term traders. I mean, there's lots of, you have to keep in mind, there's lots of people, lots of different groups of people with different time frames and different strategies all at play all at the same time. So while you might be sitting here holding all this time and not wanting to touch anything, there's people that might only want to be trading for, you know, trading on the hourly or on the minute candle. There's total degens out there. There's people with massive leverage. There's bot traders. There's, you know, all these algo trading bots and stuff that they're going to be trading the pump, you know, and so there will be some kind of a pump, no doubt. But will it be ultimately a sell the news pump where a lot of the people that are holding maybe bigger positions are going to look to fully exit? And then do we just get this kind of downward sloping price action, you know, kind of leading into the halving? I think I've probably touched on this a little bit. I'm kind of looking at maybe this level here. I know it's actually not that high. People are thinking, oh, we're going to get this big, massive, you know, God candle pump that's going to go up to 50,000 or something, or 60,000 or whatever. I don't know that that's the case. You know, we might get a wick up into here, but I won't be surprised if, like, ultimately we close that day below this sort of weekly resistance level that I have here at around 48,000, 48.2, give or take. You know, I wouldn't be surprised if we close the day out at or below that level and then just kind of bled out into the halving from there. That's, you know, I don't want to say that's my base case. I don't really know what my base case is, but like, that's something that seems like a very plausible scenario to me. And so, yeah, we're just kind of seeing this pennant form right now. And I think we're going to see, kind of make note of this structure, because I kind of have a feeling this sort of, you know, going sideways, you know, lower highs, higher lows. I kind of think we're going to see Solana basically play out that same way. It's just maybe a week behind. You know, I kind of get the sense that we bounce here and just kind of do this sort of fizzle out thing into that deadline too. And then I'm actually playing, you know, a bet here that Solana comes up and pokes this 136 level. And I'm pretty sure I talked about that in my last episode, but this 136 level I've got based on really solid touches on this weekly candle, like solid touch here, and a breakdown here, and then solid touch here, and just kind of a good, nice cluster right here. And so this is definitely a very strong area of resistance. And we didn't even quite get up to that point this week. You know, we got up to, what was it, 126? So we got up to 126. So we got $10, within $10 of it. I do think that, you know, we do pop up on the announcement and clear that level, but probably that's going to be it for a minute, you know, on a lot of, you know, on Solana. Because I mean, if you look, honestly, just looking at this on the weekly, it's way overextended. The whole market is way overextended, and it needs all of these. Like if you look at the RSIs, I don't have RSI. Well, here, let's go back to Bitcoin. We'll look at the RSI and Bitcoin on the weekly. Weekly RSI is still way overbought. Everything is overbought. Like if you pull up any weekly RSI candle or chart on any of these, they all look like this. They're all just way overbought. One thing I'm looking at too, though, that's interesting before I get back to Solana, on Bitcoin, is the Bollinger Bands are starting to tighten back up again too, which is, you know, a product of this sort of pennant flag shape here that we have. Kind of how we got, they did bunch up here, and then we had this big breakout. I kind of think we're seeing a similar bunching up here, and likely we'll have one more breakout at, you know, at this level. And if you look at this line chart here, basically this just represents the spread of the Bollinger Band, and it is getting back down to kind of that same constricted level that we saw, you know, back in here, like, oops, right here was that last one back in November. It's not as low as what we had in August when it was super, super tight, but it's getting back to a generally tight level that we can see that it often breaks out from. So likely we're going to have, and by breakout, I'm not saying either up or down. It could break out either way, but likely, I mean, obviously, given the ETF announcement, surely it's not going to break to the downside in that moment. It might whipsaw, but like it's not gonna. Yeah, it'll likely be to the upside. So we'll likely get again just kind of sideways, fizzly price action, and then a pump up. So going to go back to Solana. So yeah, so looking at assuming Solana plays out in a similar fashion, we'll get this, kind of fizzling action, pump up, bounce off this 136. I actually have a little bit of a sell order. I think I'm just going to take some profit there. Watch it doesn't even come up and hit that, and it never fills, and too bad for me. But I think this is a pretty solid, reasonable level. I think we'll get something like that, and so I'm going to look to sell if I was going to take profit, which I am. I'm hoping that my order at 136 fills. So fingers crossed on that. We'll see. But I'm going to go through some alts, and then I'm going to touch on ETH at the end because I've been kind of ignoring ETH, and then kind of to my surprise, I think to a lot of people's surprise, all of this money that was in Solana in the last month just kind of dumped into the Ethereum ecosystem in this last few days, like over the Christmas weekend, and everything ETH related is blowing up. And so I'll get into that in a minute, but I just kind of want to go through my charts here first. Because we can see a lot of these are doing a similar thing where they're all kind of starting to roll over. Even Tau, it had a big pump yesterday. It was up, it ultimately was up 20%. At one point it was up like 26%, but it really just kind of was a mean reversion back to the 20-day moving average and has since been rejected. So this is sort of more confirmation of a reversal than anything. It's like, yeah, it's nice to see a 20% day, but this is rolling over, and it'll probably end up coming back down to this bull market support band. I mean, it's well on its way already. So this is kind of, we're going to see this across a lot of charts. Like I said, this is indication that basically the run is over. The profits, people are taking profits. This is what people taking profits looks like. So all the short-term holders are taking profits, and we're getting these rollovers. That doesn't mean that all of these projects are bad long-term investments. That's not at all what I'm saying. There's just lots of cyclical price action within a longer-term cycle. So the shorter-term cycle, the 60-day cycle is over on all of these, and we're seeing these rollovers, these corrections, these mean reversions, all of this stuff. Same thing with Zero Knowledge, which I'll touch on. It's rolling over too. It's more going sideways, but technically it's rolling over. Bonk, I'm out of Bonk altogether. If you're in Bonk, you're gonna be holding that for a while, and it's a meme coin, so who knows what'll ultimately happen with that. I'm out of it. I got out of it back up here. Basically, as soon as we got down to the 20-day moving average, it was time to cut bait on Bonk. Because again, it's a meme token, and you never know when it's like a slot machine. You can't do fundamental analysis on a meme token. So you just, when the momentum dies, you get out. And this is the momentum dying. This is, closing below the 20-day moving average. We have the 10 coming down. It's about to cross back over the 20. This is a full trend reversal happening here. Basically, price is now below the 20-day moving average, multiple closures below it. Yeah. If you're still in this, good luck. That's not me. Oops, I'll come back to that one. Celestia, no, Caspa. Yeah, so a lot of these I'm just going to kind of briefly touch on real quick. Just rolling over. They all look the same, like I said. Rolling over. Rune rolling over. Helium rolling over. This one had a nice run. I think this one will actually still do well. I'm actually pretty stoked on this because this is actually gaining real world adoption. This is like a mobile network running on kind of blockchain rails, and this is cool what they're doing. And I actually bought a little bag of this that I'm going to hold on to for a minute. So, but in the meantime, it's not time to buy right now. It's time to wait until everything bottoms out and jump back in. Injective, another sort of darling of this latest last couple of months. It's rolling over too. It's not quite as far advanced as some of the other ones because it was doing better overall. So it's barely come back to touch its 20-day moving average, but it's all sort of following the same pattern. And then I think lastly, Pocket's interesting. Not a bad looking chart. It's not actually rolling over. In fact, if anything, it's pushing new highs. It poked this huge wick up here. and it's kind of wanting to keep running a little bit, but I don't know. It's tough just given the general market dynamics across the board. It would be a risk. It would be a gamble. Yes, it looks good. It's probably outpacing a lot of things at the moment, but if you're trading this on the short term, it would be a gamble to put an entry here. Jito's just kind of fizzling out. I think what I'm expecting this to do is just kind of form this big bottoming pattern and then round back up, maybe do a cup and handle at the end and then rip north. But this still needs to find its bottom. It looks like it's a brand new token. So that's kind of how that works. So yeah, I wanted to touch on ETH now and a couple of ETH things because ETH let's look at Bitcoin ETH first. So we've kind of had this chart. I hate it when it does this. Bollinger Bands screw everything up sometimes. But this looks like a serious double bottom here now. We had this big cluster here. It's forming a big cluster here. We've got a big week on the weekly candle, wick up to the 20-week moving average now. So we've got multiple indications in terms of momentum, divergences, bullish divergences now showing that a reversal is sort of in the making. Not to mention it's just way oversold versus Bitcoin and has been lagging everything, which I'll look at in the dominance chart here in a second. But yeah, so obviously ETH looks like it's due for a run. Part of me is skeptical. Like if you try to make a logical argument for ETH to run, it's difficult because there is not really a narrative supporting it other than just it's due, but nevertheless, that's the crypto market is funny sometimes, and maybe sometimes that's all it takes. So let's just kind of look at it on the USD pair for a second. It actually looks better than Bitcoin at the moment on the daily. Like it actually set a new yearly high, in fact, today. Granted, it's got this huge bearish divergence flag now, which is ugly. But it did set a new yearly high today, and Bitcoin is not even close to doing that at the moment. So that's noteworthy. That's worth paying attention to, even though it's down on the day. Technically, it did set a new yearly high. And yesterday was a big day too. Yesterday was, up quite a bit against Bitcoin also. So that's why it has that huge green week on Bitcoin. I actually have some ETH exposure, so I'm not going to get any more, but it remains to be seen. The interesting thing though with ETH is all of the sort of ETH ecosystem plays that are pumping too. Like if we look at, I had it here, Metis. No, where's Metis? Metis pumped huge over the Christmas holiday, right on Christmas Day and Christmas Eve, what was it, up 27%? Christmas Day, it was up 51%. The next day, another 12%. The next day after that, another 14, almost 15%. Finally, it's down 14% today. But this thing just went nuts. And it's funny. I saw glimpses of it on Twitter, people kind of referencing it. And sometimes it's like, I hate it when you see that. Like you'll see people talking about it on Twitter and you'll just be like, what are they on about? Because there's just so much stuff that you see, and it's like you literally have to drop what you're doing and search every single thing every time you saw something. You'd be doing this all day long every day. But I did see people talking about Metis, and I kind of just blew it off. And then I think on Tuesday or Wednesday, I was like, oh man, I wish I would have. I wish I would have stopped and looked at what they were talking about, but I didn't, and too bad. So I might take a play on this. Obviously not right now. It's really, I'd like to see it come back down to, at least this candle body here, if not all the way back down to the 10-day even. I don't know if that's a thing. Maybe it will, basically the big point I want to make with these is all of these ETH plays. Like, well, let's look at Optimism real quick. Optimism is another one. Big pumps. What was this? Was this a big pump on Christmas Day also? Well, the 22nd, 37% on the 22nd. But just, big week. And then Arbitrum, not quite as much. But still it's been pretty lively in the last week too. But the thing you want to make, or be careful of is to don't go chasing this stuff, because again, we're sort of late stage. This is the narrative right now. We're late stage into this cycle. We're late here cycle wise. We're very late stage into this. Momentum is dying. We're seeing people taking profits across all of these different charts. basically these last gasps are coming into these ETH plays. I keep missing the wrong chart. These last gasps are coming into these ETH plays. So if you buy here, you're just going to have to sit this out for a while and wait to recover. So don't go chasing this, but you could look for this to come back down to, I mean, if you think you want to actually play on this, who knows if it's actually going to do anything for another 4 months now. But like, if you do think you want to make a play on this, don't buy it here. Wait till it gets, I don't know, around 69 or maybe even down to the 10-day. Like, just wait out let the dust settle on this ETF deadline before you go jumping into any of this stuff, basically, because all of these profits, I think all of these gains from this last week are going to get sold back. You know, you're going to give up all these gains. Probably most of this stuff is going to nuke back all the way down to its 20-day moving average, if not even more. So don't go chasing this stuff. Just kind of, if you got in it, if you were in it, great. If you missed it, too bad. That's just how it goes. Let's see. I did want to look at a few more things. So I've been following the dollar index and liquidity. It's funny. Geez, earlier today, this was the complete opposite. The dollar was continuing down, setting a new lower low, and liquidity was pumping up higher. Actually, I have another chart. Let's see no. Damn it. Which one of these? This one. I didn't make this chart. This is another chart that somebody else made, but this is kind of a more comprehensive liquidity metric, and it's still kind of pumping up. And actually, let's look at this one I did make. So this is basically just a breakdown of the G5 net liquidity, which is this line right here. This was made up of 5 different central banks. So, oops. If I can just find it. So yeah, so we can see really it's the US. The Fed is liquidity is coming down quite a bit, but all these other ones, you know, what do we got? Bank of China, Bank of England, you know, Bank of European Central Bank, and Bank of Japan are all like pumping pretty good. In fact, Japan is really rallying a lot. So there's money coming into the system from other nations, not so much from the Fed right now, which is kind of making it a net negative. But liquidity is generally trending upwards still, and the dollar is generally trending downwards still. And this trend hasn't broken. And even with this little muck about here, the trend is nowhere even close to broken. So conditions are continuing to be favorable for risk assets is basically what this means. So I'm not worried about this at all right now. Also, I wanted to look at dominance charts. We're seeing a big tick up in ETH dominance corresponding with a tick down in Bitcoin dominance, and then alt dominance has leveled off somewhat, but still is generally high, and is still sort of forming a higher high. So really my play more continues to remain in alts. ETH probably will go on a run and catch up, but I do have some ETH exposure, so that's cool. I do have a little bit of Bitcoin exposure. Really, I just have some Bitcoin exposure primarily because I didn't want to be left out when we get this big pump candle on, the ETF approval, but I'll probably sell it around that time. And, I'm not sure what I'll do with it. Maybe I'll just cash it out for the moment and wait for the big dip that I'm expecting to ensue. And, figure out what I'm going to buy then. There is a scenario, of course, where we could get a multi-day or multi-week pump, into the end of January, maybe even early February. I know a few people out there have talked about that. I don't know that I buy that so much. Like, you could argue, like, if we go back to this, I think I touched on this last week. If we look at this and operate on the assumption that this was the cycle low and that this is a new 60-day cycle, this is something that would sort of support the idea that we could go into late January, early February before ultimately sort of fizzling out and going for a multi-week, multi-month, sell-off correction going into the halving, which again, if we look at the halving, is back here in April. So I'm just expecting this to be a pretty boring stretch. I think we're about to enter a pretty boring stretch here. I think we'll probably break down below this longer term trend line. Like if I zoom out on the weekly here, this longer term trend line that I have, drawn from the beginning of the year right now, we've been above it. We did break below it. Now we broke back above it. I just would not be surprised if we did break below it a chunk in this time frame coming into the halving. I just really, I don't know. I can't predict the future, but I just really won't be surprised at all if we see a bit of a lull here and then ultimately come back up and sort of reclaim this level. But I do think that we're going to lose it for a period. I think everybody should at the very least should be mentally prepared for Q1 to be kind of boring. Don't let it get you down. Don't be looking at the charts every day going, oh geez, is the bull run over? Is this cycle over? Should I have sold? Did I miss the top? Don't think of any of that. That's all nonsense. Just know that, it's cyclical, as we've seen already this year quite a bit, and we've had a massive run, kind of going back to the beginning of September. We've had a pretty good run here, and we're due the opposite for a bit. And it's just the way it works. So be mentally prepared for some boring sideways, maybe even downright ugly looking price action throughout Q1 here, coming into, April, before I think things start to get interesting again. Maybe we don't have that. Maybe it just keeps going up, and that's cool too. And I'll take that all day long. Obviously, that's great. But I'm going to be mentally prepared for this. I'm going to be taking profits, around this time in anticipation for that, so that at least I will have banked some of this, and I'll have some dry powder sitting on the sidelines. And that way I can be in a position to capitalize on this and have this sort of downward boring price action be a good thing for me and not just, a negative. So maybe think about that too. So, I mean, if you're playing the 4-year game and you're just going to wait until December of 25 to exit, then you shouldn't even be watching this video, to be honest. You should have your computer shut off and you should be out sitting on the beach. But if you're actively playing this stuff, now's the time to expect a bit of a lull. So that's all I'm saying. All right, I think that's it. Yeah, I'm going to try. I think we'll shoot for a show on Monday, because it'll be, is Monday? What is Monday? Is Monday the final day of the year? Oh, Monday is January 1st. How about that? Okay, so Monday, first day of the new year. So I'll be looking to do a show on Monday. I'm not expecting there to be much difference in price action, because I think it'll just be, nothing. Really, the only thing going on right now is trading bots and market makers, and just very, very high, low time frame day traders and degens and people, doing 100x leverage on the minute chart and just nonsense like that. There's not really anything else going on. Everybody is set with what they're going to do. They've made their profits. They've taken their profits. They're in their position for the ETF, and they're just going to sit on the sidelines until next week and go from there. So don't get caught up in anything stupid over the weekend with low volume and low volume often means high volatility. It means people getting shaken out. Don't, put in, just chill, just sit back and chill. So, okay. All right. That's it. See you guys on Monday. Have a good weekend, everybody. And,